made this mistake on my business trip and he found white fluid on my shirt. Now I'm ruined. So my husband, Tony Washington, male 35, and I, female 33, met at a mutual friend's wedding. Well, more like at my cousin's wedding. He was a friend of my cousin's husband. We were sitting at the same table. He was and still is a very handsome, clean, and sophisticated gentleman. I remember on the day we met, I had worn a very long dress, so it somehow tripped me and I almost fell. Imagine falling in front of all the people that were in that hall. It would have been such a bummer and embarrassing. So Tony luckily caught me beforehand since I was trying to stand when I tripped, and he was sitting next to me. His touch gave me goosebumps that I didn't even know I had. Not to mention his soft hands. It felt so right when they touched me. Even his gentle gesture was something else. What I felt for Tony was what I can call love at first sight. He didn't try much or said many words, but his gentleness and handsomeness drew me to him. During that day, we were talking and laughing. It was really nice to be with him. He was in good company. He made me forget about anything else. It felt like nothing was existing except for him and I. I even forgot that we were at my cousin's wedding. I had found a friend and also a lover there. I thought I had found the one my soul needed. He was my true answered prayers. I love a man who knows what they want and makes every effort to get it. Mind you, at that time I had a plan of starting my own internet cafe and coffee shop. And with Tony's knowledge and skills in IT, I knew I had gained resources to help me start a successful internet cafe. It seemed like it was a blessing in disguise, you know. It felt like with Tony by my side, I would have everything figured out, and it would be successful with his intelligence on board. Since then, we became friends. He taught me a lot about IT that I didn't know. Well, I wanted to start an internet cafe because we didn't have one in Sicily and big cities, which was far from where I was staying. So I wanted to help my community get easy access to the internet without even having to go to the big city for it. I made it specifically for students, so that they can have easy access to the internet and be able to find school projects information in it without having to waste more money to get to the big city to get it. Tony helped me start the internet cafe, which was very sweet and generous of him. I was glad for the service that he had delivered. He started being a computer tutor. Each and every minute that I would spend with him was always priceless. I still melted in his touch and his voice. It had that kind of thing that makes you feel like you have been given some voodoo, or he uses voodoo to make my heart palpitate. Months later, Tony declared his love for me. Well, I had already felt something for him and I was falling pretty hard for him, but I couldn't tell him. I was protecting my heart from being rejected and my ego and pride. He told me how much he enjoys spending time with me and thanked the opportunity that I had given of trusting him with my community children and students. Well, Tony was not from Sicily. He had first come for the wedding, which was the first day that we had first met. So Tony and I dated for 2 years. We were still in the phase of knowing each other very well before we tied the knot. It was the best option, and it gave us time to learn more about each other. I was happy with the fact that Tony was not rushing to any marriage. Yes, we were committed to each other. Well, Tony was residing in Agrigento in the southern coast of Sicily, while my home was in Piazza Armerina, which was about 1 hour and some minutes drive apart. So he would go home for like a week, then come to see me whenever he was free, or I would go to his city when I was not busy. Our love was like a flower. It kept blossoming every minute that we would spend with each other or when we were communicating. Months later, well, we had gotten 2 years of dating, so we got married on the day of our dating anniversary. You know, it's really nice and fulfilling having to spend the rest of your life with your favorite person who is also your partner. We got to share all our flaws, our dreams, our future, and plans. After getting married, we moved to Cefalù, where we wanted to start our own family. We were living the dream, and I couldn't be much happier. I mean, why wouldn't you be happy when you have been given a chance to spend the rest of your life with someone who you fell in love with on the first day that you saw him? I fell in love with Tony the day we had first met. Deep down, I knew that he was my soulmate and my caregiver. He didn't have to try hard to make me happy and feel complete. He knew how to make me feel better during my dull days. He always knew how to put a smile on my face. But you know, when I was to be asked why I cheated or dated a stranger from another country while I had the best thing in my life, I don't know how I would answer that question because I have no response for it. As time passed, cafe restaurants expanded. I ended up opening other restaurants in different cities and 2 outside the country, with Tony's help, of course. That man helped me a lot to the point that he would go as far as missing his business meetings whenever I was going to buy a certain building for the restaurant. You know, when you have something good going on but never get enough of that thing, so you go outside and seek something much better than what you have or getting. It's called greed. I got greedy and allowed my desires to lead me astray. I ended up making bad decisions. So one day, Tony started getting too busy to spend time with me. I know we were both busy, but since I was an entrepreneur, I had so much time to spend by myself. Yes, the intimate moments were still fine, but I needed his attention, and I wanted to spend more time with him. I mean, we had stayed far away from each other for almost 2 years when we were still dating. Ever since we got married, we had spent a couple of times together. We would go out, eat out, or go to play games. My relationship or my marriage with Tony was somehow great because we would always allow ourselves to be young again. Playing games, going out on ice cream dates, attending exhibitions together, we were stress-free and carefree. It was like we were in our very own dimension, living with our rules. Later that day, he respected my request to be back home before dawn and came back home earlier. During dinner, we ate over light conversation, but one would see that there was a huge change between us. The conversations were no longer flowing. It was like we were forcing it. As one of us didn't know how to carry on with the conversation, and my heart was so heavy because of his behavior, so I decided to just tell him about the things that he had been doing and how much they were hurting me. But before I told him that, I had reminded him of our third-year anniversary, and I had to take a trip to Dubai to check on the restaurant in 2 days, which took him by surprise. We talked a lot and ironed things out. I had hoped that he would change. I thought he would see his mistakes and rectify them, but instead the man of the house decided to overdo everything that he was doing. Our conversation that we had looked like it had never happened, and everything I had said went from one ear to another ear. I won't lie and say I got used to it because it was sickening and heartbreaking. My conscience would tell me that maybe he was cheating on me, or he had found someone else who was better than me. That was why he was no longer coming home often. Tony was taking the fact that I loved him for granted. He took my love for a ride, and as a good wife that I was, I would understand his behavior. I have understood and tried to come to terms with it and made peace, but it was really hard. It was hard to the point that I would sometimes cry myself to sleep whenever I would think about what was happening in my marriage. Sometimes I would just go to my grandparents' house to cool my head. The tension and everything was too much for me. My sister had suggested that she would move in with me for some time until things got back to normal between my husband and me. Things didn't go the way we had thought. Instead, he came back home regularly, but he would always complain about being tired when I tried to initiate intimacy. Tony was no longer the man that I had fallen in love with, and it was breaking my heart because I loved him, but I was getting bored of always tolerating the old man's childish behavior. I am also a human being. I am a woman. I have a high intimate drive, but he wasn't paying any attention to any of that. Even when I tried by wearing some sexy number to bring back the spark in our relationship, but it wasn't there. He wasn't there. He was always tired or complaining about having a lot of work to do. He forgot that I have desires, which is something that I had told him when we were still dating, that I have a high sex drive, and I love being intimate with my partner at least 3 or 4 times a week. It's a good thing that I had told him, right? He promised me to always deliver, but he never kept his promise. So one sunny Saturday, Tony had left the house to buy meat. He had asked me to prepare something since his friends were coming over to celebrate his other friend's arrival in Italy. I have heard that he was residing in Los Angeles, LA, but now he had relocated to this side. So I prepared everything, and Tony's other friends started coming with their partners because everyone was having a good time up until the man of the day arrived. Mind you, that time I still had to prepare for the business trip. Well, more like it was a trip to check on my restaurant business that was abroad and to meet up with the sponsor. I had told my husband about my trip, but surely that day I saw that he had forgotten about it or he was just avoiding it. During that braai, I asked to speak to my husband on the side, when we were in a quiet place, which is our matrimonial bedroom. I reminded him about my trip, and guess what he said? He just told me that he still remembers, but he doesn't see the need for me to go while we had guests. He even had the nerve to ask me who would take care of the guests if I were to go on the busy day. I couldn't believe my ears. I was so angry at him, but mostly at myself. I somehow regretted even getting into marriage. So I had rescheduled my meetings and my plane to the following day, but the meetings would take place on the day after. My husband didn't even apologize about his behavior and was insensitive when it came to my business. He preferred me to lose a sponsor than to leave his stupid braai and friends. That person who told me that was not my husband. Well, it wasn't the husband that I had thought I knew. I didn't even bother addressing the issue because it was going to cause a lot of noise and chaos. So I decided to deal with it when I came back from my trip. So the next day I went to the United Arab Emirate, Dubai, where I would be meeting the sponsor and where I had opened my restaurant. I really love Dubai for my business because besides the fact that it was a tax-free country, but it has so many business opportunities. Some look at it as a good country for vacations and tours, while some, including myself, saw it as a country with great business opportunities. It was beautiful for vacations and tours, yes, but people don't see the kind of opportunities that are in Dubai and UAE as a whole. Anyway, when I got there, I checked on my restaurant and I was impressed with the work my employers were doing, and it was quite busy when I got there, which was a bonus for me. The following day, I went to meet with the sponsor. Of course, we were meeting in my restaurant. As I was going through some paperwork. You know when someone says, "I feel like I'm looking at Jesus himself?" Well, that was what I felt. His body structure, cleanly trimmed mustache, his sexy hazel blue eyes. I was taken aback by the guy. He was really handsome. You know, the kind of handsome Leonardo DiCaprio. That was how he looked. His eyes looked naughty though, and I love being naughty. The guy was not what I had actually expected to be my sponsor. The guy was introduced as Bernard Thurston, male 33. His appearance was charming and mind-blowing. You know when you see someone for the first time and automatically feel attracted to them? That was how I felt with Bernard. I was not attracted to him because of his handsomeness only, but I would sometimes imagine myself being intimate with him. I imagined myself and him riding and grinding each other. My imaginations went wild to a point that I would see him exploring my whole body, his pinkish, sexy lips kissing every fiber of my body. I know it was wrong of me to drool and think like that for my restaurant's sponsor, but I couldn't help it. I mean, the guy was everything and more. I just wanted or craved for only one night with him. Then it would have been enough for me. I am a witch and a loose cannon, I know. But how was I supposed to stop my mind and desire to think about the poor guy? Mind you, that time he was going to be staying with us for some time up until he gets his own place to stay. So imagine the torture and pressure that I would be feeling. I know it's sinister to have these kinds of thoughts for my sponsor, and I was supposed to keep it professional, but I couldn't help it. Only one night with him was going to solve everything. As much as I love my handsome, smart husband, Bernard was the type of guy that you can only have a crush on and date because he was too extreme. His handsomeness, the way he was speaking, would make any woman drop their panties for him. 1 week later, I was still in Dubai and I was actually staying with Bernard. Well, most of the time I was with him since he had offered to take me on a tour around the UAE. He is a very cool guy, carefree, talkative, and funny. He easily adjusted to the new environment and it was going well for him. I had seen him doing workouts a few times in the morning. His abs were something else. I felt like I would touch them. I had so many dirty thoughts for the poor guy, and I really wanted to stop thinking like that with my sponsor, for goodness sake. During that week, I remember that I was in the small kitchenette in the B&B that I was staying in preparing breakfast for both me and him. Yes, we had spent the night together, but going through some paperwork together and talking about business. He then came in wearing only a very tight vest and jogging shorts. He just stayed with me in the kitchen, keeping me company. Only if he knew that his company was a destruction to me. He started asking me about my life in general and how I started the restaurant business, wanting to know how being married was. I told him what he needed to hear and found it enough to share. I couldn't tell him everything about my life and my marriage. Yes, he was my sponsor, but not my friend. So I couldn't tell him everything that is going on between my husband and I. It was going to be over boundaries. No. Mind you, Tony and I had been arguing a lot lately about why I left without notifying him, and about him being always absent even when I was away. He never called to check up on me and how the business was going. That led to a very heated and biggest argument. My husband and I were slowly drifting apart. Yes, our connection and love would always be there, but we were drifting apart. I felt like he was trying to push me away because even when he is under stress and pressure, he no longer confides in me as his wife. I would sometimes wonder who he confides to if he was shutting me out the way he was doing. It really hurt me having to beg every day for your partner to give you the attention that you need. The more I was spending time with Bernard, the more we got closer. I ended up confiding in him about Tony's behavior and my marital problems because it was really shutting my heart. And it was just evident that I was going through something because I would sometimes zone out when Bernard was speaking to me. I didn't know who to talk to, so Bernard was the only person who was willing to listen to me vent about my marriage. I know I shouldn't have done that, but what I was supposed to do, because I couldn't keep my sadness and heartbreaking moments inside my chest. I was going to burst and a lot would have been destroyed. So Bernard prepared snacks for us, especially marshmallows and hot chocolate, which were my favorite when I was not feeling well or feeling down. I had expanded my time in Dubai. I was still enjoying myself, and I didn't want to be around Tony for a little while. I appreciated the time and ear that Bernard had lent me and made me vent in him. I needed to offload. My chest was too heavy. As I was crying like that, Bernard hugged me and promised to always be there for me when I needed a shoulder to cry on. Since Tony had been so distant and acting the way he was, especially after the argument that we had, he started switching off his phone to a point that he would not be reachable the whole day, maybe until late in the evening. And I knew how much he hated being called late in the evening because he would be in bed sleeping or working. Bernard's hug was actually what I needed. You know, the kind of hug that is warm and welcoming? The one that makes you feel like everything is going to be okay. So as we were still hugging, I found myself kissing him. We kissed and things got out of hand. A kiss escalated. We ended up doing the deed in the lounge. Mind you, that time I had no clue that Tony had bugged my phone's camera to track all my movements and to know what I am doing, with who and when. I had completely forgotten that my husband was that insecure, and that was the reason why he didn't want me to fly to Dubai. Since that indescribable day, Bernard and I continued seeing each other. Sometimes we would get intimate all over the B&B, even on the couches, and it was just fire, while some other time we would go to a nearest hotel to book for the day. We couldn't book for the night because my husband was going to be suspicious when I did not answer my phone whenever he called. We did our thing carefully because if Tony was to find out about us, I knew that I was going to suffer the consequences and I would be left a divorced woman. Bernard was giving it to me so sweetly and gently. He was very explosive. He knew how to explore a woman's body and make her feel foreign and end up speaking in tongues. He knew every spot to touch to make me submit to his commands. Well, he loved gentle, rough, intimate moments. I didn't even know that there was actually gentle, rough type of intimate sessions. I learned a lot from Bernard, even some new positions that someone would think are extreme, but they are very enjoyable and nice. I was not a submissive wife to my husband, but with Bernard, I was submissive without even thinking twice. My husband loved missionary intimacy, while Bernard loved exploring new positions, and I learned a lot. I mean, my own husband was a 1 or 2 rounds type of person, then he would get tired and fall asleep. Bernard, on the other hand, was a dragon. He was spitting fire when it comes to intimacy. He would make you go all night and even wake you in the morning. He would always leave my private area burning and tired. The guy knew his thing, and up until today I complimented him. He is the best.
Yeah, man.
My relationship with Bernard went on and on for like 1 month, well until the day I went back home. He made sure to check up on me and promised to visit me. We were still careful, but Bernard didn't want us to be private. He wanted us to be seen in public as dating people, and that was not what I had wanted. As much as I was enjoying the intimacy and everything that Bernard was offering, but I loved my husband so much. I wouldn't just leave my husband for an intimacy freak like Bernard. He is doing me good and exploring my body the way I had been desiring, but I wouldn't divorce my husband to be with him. He didn't understand that our relationship was an intimate relationship in business and nothing more or less. But the poor guy had caught feelings, and that was not what we had agreed on. It was purely and strictly intimacy. Weeks later, I ended my affair with Bernard. I felt like I had destroyed my marriage and went against my wedding vows. I shouldn't have allowed temptations and desires to control me like that. I should have respected myself and my marriage with Tony. Bernard had started to catch feelings, and it was not looking good because we would sometimes argue about his obsessive behavior. I don't know why he was suddenly obsessed, because we had an agreement of no strings attached. But he decided to attach strings on our thing, and the whole thing got crushed. I went back to my marital home. I wished to change the location and buy a new home for Tony and myself, because the house held so many memories. Even the memory of myself being broken and not taken as the loved wife for the first time was in my marital home. I felt like I had disrespected my husband in the worst way possible, and there was no way to undo what I had done. That's how guilty I was feeling. I know I had wanted or craved for Bernard for at least one night, but it shouldn't have escalated like it did. I should have kept everything professional and strictly business, but no. The stupid me just mixed business with pleasure, and guess what happened? I was F***ed. A few days later, Tony was back at home. Well, he was working at home most of the time. The guilt was eating me up like a deadly disease. I had tried to act normal around my husband, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew something was wrong. I couldn't bear looking at him and acting like a happy wife while I knew what I had done. Tony, being as nonchalant as ever, didn't seem to notice anything amiss. The guilt and anxiety of my abomination grew with each passing day. So one day I was just chilling at home, going through some documents and preparing for the month-end special menus. Bernard had called and asked for a meeting since he was around the country. Obviously, he is or was my sponsor, so I asked him to come over to my house since I was not feeling too well to be seen in public places. Luckily, he agreed. I didn't know that the feelings that I had thought I had buried when I ended things with Bernard would somehow be out there, you know. The real reason why I had ended things with Bernard was because I was also catching some feelings for him, and it was becoming dangerous. During that beautiful sunny morning, I had woken up craving for some intimacy and I needed my husband. So I asked Bernard to come over to my house. I was alone, so I thought, why not invite Bernard over? When Bernard got inside, I couldn't contain myself, so I just told Bernard that we should just get to business. He started by exploring my body so nicely and smooth as usual. Bernard's touch was always like a drug to me, and I was enjoying it so bad. Things got out of hand. Our quick, intimate moment went to be the longest and sweet one. It wasn't my intention to do what I did, especially at my marital home, but I was in my desired moment, and I was too lazy to be out of the house. So that's why I had called Bernard over. I thought it was going to be one quick round to get my satisfaction, but it ended up being the whole service. As we were still busy, and I was about to reach my Cloud9 climax, I heard people speaking. I first didn't pay attention to it because the TV was also playing, so I had thought it was TV, only to find out that it was Tony with his friend from work. He looked so spooked and somehow heartbroken, or rather traumatized, for what he had come across. As much as I was not feeling any guilt when my thing with Bernard kept happening, but when I saw Tony's face, I felt ping of guilt and regret. I regretted everything that I had done. It was like I had recently regained my consciousness. At first, I had wished to be told that dreaming or what was happening wasn't true. But it was, and from there, and then I knew that I had destroyed my marriage. I don't really know why I had invited Bernard over to my marital home with my husband, but desires drove me to that decision, and it cost me a lot. I tried hiding my body from Tony's friend, but it was too late. He had already seen everything, and there was nothing I could have done except for taking the throw that was on the couch and covering myself. Tony became a statue, so at some moments I think he was trying to digest what he had seen. After some time, I asked Bernard if he should go along with Tony's friend. I was glad when they complied with my request and went out. I was left with Tony, mind you. That time I didn't know what to say nor do. My mind went blank and my tongue got dry. I wanted to tell him that it wasn't what he was thinking, but that would be useless because he had caught me red-handed. On another side, I wanted to apologize and tell him that it will never happen again. But what would I be apologizing for? I didn't know that if I was to apologize to Tony, I would be apologizing at the fact that I got caught, or I would be apologizing at the fact that I had went against my own wedding vows of being loyal and faithful, and went outside to destroy that one thing that we had going on, and we had worked so hard to make it where it was. Yes, Tony was the main reason why I had gone outside our marriage to find satisfaction outside, but that didn't mean I should have listened to my desires and jeopardized my marriage, right? 1 month later, things were still not fine between Tony and I, but we continued living together. We didn't even talk about what had taken place. When I tried to apologize or even try to explain to him what had really happened, he would dismiss me and go out to only God knew where. I was regretting ever getting it up with Bernard again because I had closed the Bernard chapter when I started to learn how to focus on my marriage, but on my mini vacation, the guy just showed up and all the desires that I had came back. All I wanted was for Tony to pay attention to me and take me or treat me as his wife, not his roommate. I needed him next to me. I wanted to feel his touch, his kisses and intimate moments. I wanted him to notice me just like the old time when we started dating and even before we got married. I missed him. I missed the spark that we had before we got married and during our first years of being married. I wanted my best friend back, but he wasn't there, and Bernard was there to step in where Tony couldn't provide. During that month, he came back home and told me that he had moved on, and I should find a place to stay because his new person was going to move in with him, so one had to go. I asked who was the person he wanted to bring into our marital home, and he told me that he would introduce me to her later, that day. All I had to do was to cook a nice dinner because she was a special guest. That time I kept thinking about who he would bring into our home and why would he tell me such a thing. My mind was telling that he was doing that to spite me or make me jealous. Sure, I had done him wrong in the worst way possible, but how could he want to introduce his new girlfriend to me while I was still his lawful wife? My heart was torn apart. I found myself going into a very depressing state that I had never thought I would survive. He should have just filed for divorce if he didn't love me anymore instead of hurting me the way he was. I was not sure if I was ready to see his newly found love or a bait to spite me. Later that day, he came back and I got the best shock of my life. He came in with my worst enemy. Imagine my lower grade bully was actually the girl that Tony introduced to me as his new lover. I couldn't believe it, you know. I looked at Patricia with so much hate and rage. I hadn't forgiven nor forgotten the things that she had done to me while we were in senior primary school. I couldn't believe Tony, and to worsen things, He forwarded me all the videos from the very beginning of my affair with Bernard in front of his girl, then told me to check my socials in an hour. Tony introduced her and looked like they were genuinely in love with each other. I couldn't believe that my own husband would actually betray me like that with my enemy's worst part. I didn't know what to say. To say my heart was shuddered would be an understatement. How can a person who claimed to love do something so sinister to you? I couldn't fathom seeing them all touchy-feely in front of me, so I had left them alone in the dining room. Tony came into our bedroom and asked if I felt how sweet the revenge was, and that he wasn't done because that was a start. I couldn't believe the psycho that I had married. I thought he was sane, but no, he was insane. So he used my worst enemy to spite and avenge himself just because he had caught in an act with Bernard. Tony was just pure evil and disgusting. After that hour, he had told me to check my socials, and I checked why he wanted me to be on socials in the evening. When I logged in, all my actions with Bernard were posted there. People even created memes with our videos. It was so embarrassing and degrading. I went back to my grandparents' house, and to say they were disappointed at what I did and how I had destroyed my marriage would be an understatement. But another thing, they got very angry when they learned that my husband had gone out to take my worst enemy to avenge himself. The very same person who I almost lost my life to because of her. Tony had the nerve to take her and introduce her to me. You know, that time I lost a lot, including my investors and sponsors, because even now I'm trying to get other investors, but I'm failing because of those videos. I don't know what to do nor say. Please help me understand what was going on in my marriage. Yes, till today we have not got divorced, but we no longer live together. Another thing I want to do is to save my businesses because slowly they are drowning and going down the drain. What should I do? How do I deal with all of it? I am suffering. I know I am the one who started all this, but I never thought I would find myself in this situation. Please advise me because I am lost in the wild and I need to get out. Why did I allow desires to tempt me and end up falling in another man's chest? I knew that I was married and my husband was a very insecure person. I would always ask myself the same question, but I had never found any answers. So my husband Moses, male 50, and I, female 45, first met in Ibiza in Spain on my 40th birthday celebration. My friends had asked me to let loose a little because I had been cooped up with work and barely enjoying my time. My husband was the host of the event that was happening in Ibiza, and it was a blast. As my friends and I were sitting in the VIP section, my husband came to us and asked if we were enjoying the event. I couldn't even answer him because I was so glued to his handsomeness, his perfectly shaped face, nicely trimmed mustache, perfect white teeth, and to top it all, he had deep dimples, which made him look sexier. My friends brought me back to earth by shaking me because if they were to call out my name, I was not going to hear, the way I was so focused on the guy. So when I had finally come back to my senses, they told me that the host was speaking to me. So if a person speaks with you, you should give them all your attention. So I looked at the guy in the eyes to show that he had my attention. He started by wishing me a happy birthday and asked us to join him and his crew on another section to make my birthday more fruitful and fun. The way he was speaking, I was taken back and charmed. Mind you, I had just recovered from a very abusive and controlling fiancé, who I thank God every day for taking me out of that relationship because it was toxic. So we went to join him and his crew, and they were very welcoming and full of life. We really enjoyed ourselves. The guy kept asking me if I was fine, and that really amazed me because no one had ever shown so much care, even if I was in a place of having good times. Well, I have that love obsession with guys who have dimples. Was I being sluttish? The host, who later became my husband, came to sit next to me and introduced himself as Moses. He was actually from Manchester in England, so he had come to Spain for his first big event. Mind you, I was also from Manchester, but I had never even bumped into him, even by mistake. We talked throughout the night up until the event ended, and he was super exhausted to even continue working, so he opted that we exchange numbers so we would be able to talk. 2 days after, Moses texted me and apologized for texting late. I got very charmed. He was such a gentleman. I mean, not all guys text a girl after 2 days and apologize for texting late. Guys nowadays are douchebags and don't even think like gentlemen. So what Moses did was what I didn't expect and was charming. He told me that he was going to go back to Manchester a day after, so he asked to take me out and enjoy his last day in Ibiza. Obviously, I agreed. I mean, who wouldn't? It's really hard rejecting someone as handsome as him, and to top it up, he had a very sexy voice. So we met, we had a very lovely day together. He even bought me a birthday gift, of which was something I didn't even expect. We got along pretty well. It was like we were cut from the same cloth. We had a lot in common. We shared a lot about ourselves, our goals. Funny enough, I even found out that he was actually not far from where I was staying, as he lived in Chorlton-cum-Hertford, and I lived in Salford, which was about 15 minutes apart. Moses was working as a sound engineer, which explained the event he had hosted in Ibiza. We got pretty close. It was like we had known each other for a very long time. As we had gone back to Manchester, he promised to see me again, and I couldn't wait, you know. I couldn't wait to spend more time with him and get to learn more about him. Was I already falling for the guy? I couldn't get him off my head. We chatted every day, and I was actually falling for the guy. The attention he would give me was on top of the world. He would always ask if I was still okay. He was really fussy over me in a charming way, though, and I loved the attention he gave me. We went out a lot. He introduced me to his friends and his colleagues that he was working with. It was truly a great moment for me. We started dating after 3 months of getting to know each other, and I was falling hard for him to a point that it looked dangerous because I would have a bad day and be in a bad mood if he didn't talk to me for like an hour. I think I was obsessed, but no, I wasn't. I was just feeling the guy on a deeper level that it was sometimes scary. I would think, what if he leaves me someday and finds someone else better, who would be on his level, and I would be left alone to pick up the broken pieces of my fragile heart. 7 months later, he proposed. Our relationship was ecstatic. He made sure to always make me feel special in every way. You know when someone makes you feel like you are the only important thing in his life? Like you are the apple of their eyes. Well, that was what Moses made me feel. He was not ashamed or scared to show off his woman to his either friends or colleagues. He made sure to always make time for me, even if he was busy or he would be hosting an event somewhere. He took me with him. So Moses proposed and we got married 2 months later. Well, I had wanted a small and intimate wedding, but the guy had so many relatives, colleagues, and friends. So it was kind of a big wedding, but nonetheless, we were both happy. Our families were happy. Moses was the guy of a guy that most girls fantasize or dream to have in their lives, and I had that. We were so much happy and so much in love until we were not. As time went on, Moses had started being the boring person. I couldn't understand what was going on with him because if I would try and address the issue, he would just make an excuse about being under pressure at work. He was no longer spending much time at home. It was like I had become his housemate because in the morning we would both go to work. Well, more like he would go to work very early in the morning, then I would be left behind and go around 8. And when it was time to knock off, I would be in the house earlier than him as he had recently started coming back home late at night. My husband Moses was a good man, but he was also boring. Well, he had started being a very serious and boring person 6 months after our wedding. He was not giving me his time and attention anymore. The thought of him cheating on me and finding someone better than me came across my mind, but I would put the thoughts away and console myself by convincing my heart that Moses loved me enough, and a lot for him to just cheat on me. I thought he was going to change, you know. I had faith in our relationship and marriage. The change he made was very huge to a point that he never wanted to go out and explore new things with me like we used to anymore, and he never made me feel like I was the center of his universe. It was a lot, and it was hurting me a lot. I couldn't even address the issue that we were facing anymore because I knew what his excuse would be, so it was no use trying to find the cause or the root of our problems. One weekend, a friend of mine hosted a party, and that was where I met him, the man I cheated with. He was charming and handsome. He introduced himself as George Jackson, male, 47. He was really funny, and he knew how to make a person forget their problems. From that moment we met, there was undeniable chemistry between us. He made me forget that I had a very huge and depressing problem in my house. My husband was depressing me to a point that I was sleeping with wine every night. George and I talked for hours, and I felt more alive than I had ever been in years. George was attentive and complimentary, showering me with affection. He understood a woman's needs and desires, you know. He made me feel like I was a woman again, and that I was not the problem. It was a lot, and I was drowning. As we were talking and laughing, George started telling me sweet things that would make any woman melt. But then I remembered that I was actually a married woman. We spoke more about ourselves. I even mentioned the problems I was facing in my marriage. He was kind and understanding, and he listened to me without judgment. He offered me a shoulder to cry on and a sympathetic ear, something that Moses had failed to do. Over time, George and I became close friends, and I found myself confiding in him more and more. He was always there for me, and he made me feel seen and heard in a way that Moses had not for years. So we started hanging out as friends, of course. As the months passed, my friendship with George grew stronger, and we started to develop feelings for each other. We began an affair, and I found myself feeling alive and desired for the first time in years. He had that dopamine over me that I was missing, and every moment with him was magical. I loved my husband, but this newfound excitement and admiration was intoxicating. I knew I shouldn't have done this, but the thrill of being desired by someone new was hard to resist. It felt like I was living in another dimension. It was really refreshing. The way Moses didn't pay attention to me, he didn't even notice what was happening in front of his eyes. I had thought he was going to notice some changes in me or the way I was always out. I was no longer spending much time in the house, especially during weekends. I was always out with either George or by myself. That was how ignorant he was. I would always wonder what was happening in his head, but I got tired of being concerned. I needed his time, attention, and affection, but he was too busy for that. I once had thoughts of him cheating on me or performing adultery on our marriage because of the way he was acting. What was hurting the most was that someone else was giving me the attention I had always longed for, the time I needed and affection, and it was not my husband. George was giving me an adrenaline rush and he was making me happy. Putting a smile on my face and thinking about him would make me giggle like a little girl seeing her crush. I don't even remember when was the last time I had felt like that. I was sure that even my soul had a dust of sorrows because I was no longer happy with my husband. George had that effect on me that I couldn't even explain, but it was there. Sometimes when my day wasn't a great day, if he didn't call or if I didn't see him at our secret spot, he surely knew what I'd been missing. Was I too attached to George? Well, I think I was. One evening, George suggested we sneak away for a romantic getaway together. Moses had not been home for a couple of days. Well, it was more like he would come back from wherever he was very late, and I would be long asleep, then leave very early around 6 in the morning, and I would still be sleeping. I had never been on a real vacation with my husband, besides on our honeymoon, which was cut short by an emergency that needed him at work, and the thought of escaping my mundane life for a weekend with George was enticing. I had to come up with an excuse to leave the house, so I texted Moses and told him that I was going out with friends for a weekend getaway just to show him respect. George and booked a room at a hotel in the city just a few hours away. When we arrived at the hotel, he took my hand and led me to our room. He pulled me close and kissed me passionately. The moment was electric, and I melted into his embrace. I felt really great to feel someone giving you such attention. I couldn't even remember the day I last had an intimate moment with a male person or my husband. He would always come back tired to even touch me. The only thing he managed to do was giving me a perk when he came back from work or going, and that was it. So it was actually a very good feeling and escape for me. George and I spent the entire weekend exploring the city and getting to know each other better. George showered me with compliments and made me feel like the most desirable woman in the world. It felt so right at that moment, like there was nothing wrong. He made sure to shower me with money also. He was such a romantic person. My weekend with George was what I had really needed. It was truly therapeutic for me. So as we were exploring the city, George had suggested that we go to the beach. Since it was hot, so the weather allowed, we went to the beach. He then asked me to swim with him. I was a bit hesitant at first, but he begged me and I couldn't resist his begging, sexy eyes, so I eventually agreed, so we swam together. As we were swimming together in the ocean, I felt a rush of excitement and guilt. I knew that what I was doing was wrong, but I just couldn't help myself. I was tired of feeling ignored and unappreciated by my husband, and this handsome George guy was making me feel alive again. After the swim, George and I went back to the hotel room and spent the night together. It was a passionate and intense encounter, and I felt like I had finally found the attention and affection I had been missing from my husband. George was so gentle with me. He appreciated and complimented my body in a way that I felt like living my true self. He took me to another planet. I was feeling all sorts of tingles and butterflies inside me. As our weekend together came to an end, I knew I had crossed a line. I was falling for George, but I also loved my husband. I felt guilty about what I had done and wondered if I should confess everything to him or not. But confessing was going to ruin a lot of things and destroy my marriage. It was like I was stuck between a rock and a very hard place, and I didn't even know how to get out of the situation. As much as I loved my husband, but sometimes I find myself feeling particularly lonely and unappreciated. Imagine being with someone, my husband, that you only see once or twice on weekdays. He comes home when you're asleep and leaves early in the morning. When he is at home, he is in his office and he doesn't want to be bothered unless you would be bringing him something to eat or snack on. I didn't know what to do anymore because he was not even paying any attention to my concerns. As much as I needed his time and attention, I was really concerned about his health. He was too attached to his work to a point that he would just lock himself in his study or small office room the whole day. I was really worried about him, and the connection that we had was slowly fading. I had been patient for way too long. Even the heart that loves also gets tired, right? And love alone was not enough if there was no connection and affection. So George took that step and closed the gap that I was feeling in my marriage. George made me realize that there is actually a lot you can do and achieve in life. You just need to know what you want and make sure it makes you happy. I was no longer happy in my marriage, but I was happy when I was with George. Was that even normal?
No.
My affair with George was purely and strictly an intimate affair. No feelings were involved. I knew that I loved my husband so much and I wouldn't want that to end. I loved Moses. In fact, I still love him so much, and I don't think there would ever be someone that I would ever love like I love him. My marriage meant a lot to me. I know that what I did was very stupid and selfish of me. I had not only jeopardized my marriage, but I had broken my wedding vows that I had made in front of my whole family. I committed adultery knowing very well that I was married. I had thought that maybe I was the problem. I started doubting myself. I had thought that maybe I was no longer enough for him, or I had changed and got ugly. What was I supposed to think? I started having low self-esteem. I was sinking deep into depression, but luckily I had George to distract me from my sorrows. He was everything and more. I told my parents about what was going on in my marriage, and the advice I got was, in marriage you have to be patient with your husband. Just make sure not to make something that would drive him away from your marriage. I didn't understand that kind of advice because it was useless and pathetic. Days later, my husband once asked me if I was still happy in our marriage. Stupid me, instead of being honest, I lied and told him that I was still happy. I know it was a pretty dumb move that I had done, and I regretted not being honest in the first place because honesty and communication is the key to successful marriage and relationships, right? But I chose to be a liar and a fool out of my husband, not knowing that he actually had evidence of my cheating ways and he knew the truth. It was just that he wanted me to come clean and confess everything to him, but I failed. About a week later, my husband had been home a lot lately, and it really surprised me because I even forgot when was the last time I had seen him around the house. The worst part was not being locked up in his office working. As much as it was supposed to make me happy, but I was not, especially for the sudden change of heart. He would still tell me that he loved me, but I didn't, and I couldn't believe it anymore. I mean, there were a lot of loopholes in his act, and it was really alarming. One would think we were so much in love and would look like the perfect couple ever. But I knew my husband and he was hiding something from me, and I had to try and find out what he was really hiding. I was so unstoppable, I was just hooked in the lovemaking that I was doing with George. I didn't care much about my husband anymore. I mean, I had got on my feet and I was getting what I had been desiring for the longest time. So I would just leave Moses in the house sometimes and tell him that I was going to meet up with someone while I was going to meet up with George in our secret location. Little did I know that the bubble that I was in would soon be busted, and it was not going to be very nice. I became the person that I would not even recognize. I had started lying a lot to Moses about my whereabouts, and I would wear revealing clothes. I'm sure Moses would see that I was lying about where I was going at times because of the way I was wearing and where I said I was going to. I really don't know what was happening to me, but whatever it is that was happening, I totally regret it. It changed me in the worst way possible. Even my parents would be concerned about me. But little did they know that I was actually having an affair with a guy who drove me crazy with his intimate action. One day I had lied to Moses about where I was going. Forgetting that I had married a very analytic man, I didn't know that he had access to my phone, though I had once suspected since he loved sitting on computers a lot or sometimes borrowing my phone, I don't know for what. I told him that I was visiting my friend Lawrence, not knowing that he already had information of where I was going. So I met up with George in the restaurant. We went there to order something to eat before going to our secret spot. It is a 30 minutes drive from my marital house to the restaurant. If I knew that on that day the universe wouldn't be on my side, I wouldn't have gone to meet up with George. George and I got into our secret location, and without wasting any time, we got into what we did best. We made so much of S****, and it was so wild. It was like we knew that it was going to be our last day together. The way things were happening, I should have known that something big was going to happen, but with my nonchalant self, I didn't even notice. I was just so caught up in a small bubble that George and I were in. We were really enjoying each other's time and affection. That time, George and I were deeply in intimacy. We were doing all those nasty and freaky things. George really knew his things and had a lot of experience in this intimacy department. He knew what he was doing. It was like he was trained, you know. The way he was so gentle with a woman's body, it was like he had learned it from the book or at school. Somehow I wished that it was at least my husband who was doing all those things to me, but it was just a random man that I had got from my friend's party, and that man calls himself George. As we were chilling after we were done with our intimate sessions, George started confessing his feelings for me, which shocked me because I took him as just my destruction, my intimate partner. I couldn't understand his sudden developed feelings. I rejected him and told him that I was married and he was just my intimate partner, and that was it. I didn't see him in the way he was seeing me. The guy did the unthinkable and blackmailed me to at least spend 2 nights at his house or become his booty call. He even told me that he will pay me a lot of money if I agree to that. If I didn't want my husband to find out about the times I had been spending with him and telling him about my marriage problems. I was so surprised by his sudden change, I didn't know what to do because he had been recording all our conversations, which I didn't know about. I had no control over the situation. I didn't want my husband or my parents to know about my affair with this man. I just couldn't believe that George would do me like that. I had thought we were just having a good time and just having fun because he was also engaged to be married. What we were doing was not supposed to be happening, and it was not supposed to even start. Him and I had broken our homes and jeopardized our relations. So I didn't and couldn't understand why he would suddenly get attached and decide to confess his feelings for me. In an instant, I received a notification that I had received a very big price from Mr. Jackson. I just couldn't believe the amount of money that he had transferred. All that money for spending 2 nights at his house and having a little fun. In my mind, I told myself that this man is crazy because there was no sane person who would pay someone that amount of money just because he wanted to have fun with me. We were already having fun, so what was the point of buying me just to have that fun? Since I had decided to just cut all contacts with George despite the amount of money that he had transferred on my account, I had to focus on my marriage. I told myself that I had a lot to lose if I were to continue playing George's puppet. A week later, Moses came back looking angry. He didn't even tell me what had made him angry. He slapped me and called me names. I was so confused and shocked by his outburst until he told me that he knew about my floozy ways with the guy I met at the pub. Since that day, my life became miserable. I was paying for the stupid decisions that I had made. My only sin was trusting a stranger and telling him about my marriage. Worst part, even if I tried to deny it, Moses had proof, which meant that the guy had sent him everything because I had blocked all contacts with him and filed for a restraining order since he was starting to harass me, threatening me. I think he was somehow kind of obsessed with me because there is no other reason why a person would act like the way George was acting. I thought he was not going to bother me anymore since it had been a year. I didn't think he would come back and I would be stuck in the middle of everything. So I was just chilling at home, going through some Netflix. Moses had moved out of the house without saying a word, only the time when he was calling me names and telling me that he knew about my floozy ways. I really missed my husband so much as some of the words that he had said to me stung, but I knew that I had deserved them. I had done the poor guy wrong, and I somehow found myself in a sticky situation with my affair. A few days later, I received a call from an unknown number. I first hesitated to answer it, but eventually I did, hoping that it would maybe be Zach because I had been trying to reach out to him. I wanted to apologize and maybe try and fix our marriage. To my surprise, it wasn't the person I had expected, but it was my worst nightmare, Steve. When I answered the call, he just told me to meet him at the hotel not too far from my house and told me the room number if I didn't want my shenanigans to be on the front page of the newspaper. When you have no control over a situation to a point that you just go with the flow and obey the request that you had been given. That was me agreeing to meet up with George at the hotel just because I didn't want my affair with him to be posted all over social media and newspapers. It would create a lot of chaos and unwanted attention. So I went to that given hotel location. I had told myself that I wanted to put him in his place so that he would not bother me anymore. I was just fed up with George's threats. I even wished he would maybe disappear from the Earth's surface and never come back. So when I got there, I found him with only the hotel gown, drinking those expensive whiskey and smoking cigars. He didn't even wait for me to settle down or at least greet me. The guy just went straight to the point. He told me to have a little fun with him and I would be in charge since he had paid me a lot of money. I tried telling him where to get off, but he just said that he wanted all his money back or I obeyed his request. So he came to where I was sitting and started touching me to a point that I lost control. The effect that George had on me and my body? So my body reacted to his touch even though I tried by all means to ignore what had been happening in my body. But it wasn't possible. It was really hard resisting the person who only knew how to make your blood rush and heartbeat abnormally. We ended up kissing, doing all those foreplay moves. Remember, I was in charge, so he had no control over what was happening. I was also in my moment. Would you blame me? I hadn't been intimate for a long time, and I had been longing for some action since my husband left wherever he went. As George and I were very much into it. I couldn't contain myself any longer, so I decided to just get on top of him so I can do what I do best. I always enjoyed intimacy with George, but that day I really don't know what happened. I just couldn't believe the thing that suddenly happened. I knew George as the lion in bed, but what happened during our session was something that I was not expecting. It was just embarrassing, really, and I saw that he was also embarrassed. I was so much in the mood to get some vitamin D to at least reach climax and release, but that ended up not happening because of what happened. So as I was getting on top of him, getting ready to ride him like my life depended on it, I saw that he was also ready for me and everything that was going to happen, but the moment was ruined by one simple thing. So when I was starting to ride him, I felt something weird, like I was actually riding air or his hip. I started ignoring that because I thought that maybe I was too much into it, so I should just continue. But the moment kept getting weirder. I got off him and to find out that he had actually lost half of his Johnson. Imagine the embarrassment, and the mood was just drained to a point that I got so angry because that wasn't the George that I had been having an affair with for the longest time. The way I was so pissed, I just left him in that hotel room and told him to never contact me again with his sick Johnson. I couldn't believe that the moment was just ruined just like that, and I couldn't even reach my G-spot. I drove back home angry like that. I didn't notice any weird thing in my car because I was angry. So as I was driving, I heard my car tire bursting, then the car lost control. I tried swaying it to avoid it colliding with other cars, but I failed and my car collided with the truck. Well, more like it bumped on the back of a truck. Then another car came and collided with mine. It was just a mess and a disaster. Grateful to my mother's connections since she was an attorney. It didn't take any longer to find out who had tempered my car tires. When my mother told me, I just couldn't believe it. To say I was shocked would be an understatement. I was devastated. I couldn't believe that Moses would actually do something so sinister to a person he claimed to love, and that person is his wife. As if that wasn't enough, I saw the news on the hospital TV and I was crushed when I saw that the house that they were talking about being in flames was actually my matrimonial home. Nothing would explain what had started the fire because I knew that Moses was behind it, meaning all my things, including my IDs, were burnt in the house. After a month, my parents took me back home. I couldn't eat nor was able to talk to anyone for about 2 or 3 weeks. My life was taking a huge, unexpected, and depressing turn because I had been receiving notifications stating that my accounts had been wiped clean, including the account that I had opened when I started the affair with George, so that Moses wouldn't find out about those transactions. And obviously I had thought that it was Moses who was behind that also. But when my mother told me who was behind it, I was shocked. George had money, so why would he wipe my accounts to spite me? That was not the only thing that he did, because he even posted our intimate moments on social media. I was trending for months, people exchanging words about me and calling me names. I wished I could be wiped from the surface of the earth, just like how my accounts were wiped. I had to start afresh everything, restart my life. My parents helped me a lot during the healing process. It wasn't easy, but with God and my parents' support, I'm still trying to get on my feet again. I want to avenge myself, or maybe find justice for myself for all the things that Moses and George did. What should I do? Please help me. I need ways on how I can get justice for the actions that these two men did to me in my life. I really need my life back.